I never thought I'd be telling this story. Even now, running my fingers across the smooth oak of my newest creation, I sometimes can't believe it happened to me. But it did. 5 years ago, I met Rebecca Harrington at a charity auction in Asheville. I was 34, and my handcrafted walnut dining table was the featured item of the night. I stood in the corner, watching as people admired my work, when this striking woman with auburn hair and a confident smile approached me. "You're the craftsman," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm Ethan Miller," I replied, extending my calloused hand, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around mine. "Rebecca Harrington," she said, "but everyone calls me Becca." There was genuine warmth in her eyes as she looked at the table. "It's exquisite," she told me. "You're the real deal in a world of fakes." I didn't know then that those words would echo in my mind years later with cruel irony. Our worlds couldn't have been more different. I built my custom furniture business from nothing but raw talent and stubborn determination after my father died when I was 16. My mother, a schoolteacher, taught me the value of honest work and careful saving. Becca came from wealth. Her parents, Lawrence and Catherine Harrington, were prominent real estate developers who owned half the luxury properties in the mountains surrounding Asheville. But our differences seemed charming back then. She loved showing up at my workshop in her designer clothes, watching me transform rough lumber into functional art. I loved introducing her to the simple pleasures of my world. Farmers markets on Sunday mornings, camping beneath the stars in the Blue Ridge Mountains, dinners with neighbors on our back deck. We married after 18 months of dating, despite her parents' thinly veiled disapproval. Lawrence never called me by my name, always introducing me as Becca's husband at their country club gatherings. I told myself it didn't matter. We had our own magical world in the modest 3-bedroom craftsman home I'd spent years renovating. Becca chose the designs, and I implemented them, transforming each room into exactly what she envisioned. Our bathroom had a clawfoot tub she'd fallen in love with in a design magazine, and I built a custom vanity to match. The kitchen featured handcrafted maple cabinets that took me 3 months of evenings and weekends to complete. Every inch of our home had been touched by my hands, shaped by our shared dream. For the first 4 years, I believed we were building something special together. We saved diligently, accumulating $42,000 for our future. Maybe children, maybe a larger workshop for me, maybe the travel Becca occasionally mentioned wanting to do. I didn't notice the changes at first, the subtle shift in the way she'd look around our home, as if suddenly seeing its limitations rather than its charm. The casual mentions of her colleagues' bigger houses, newer cars, more impressive vacations. "Jessica from marketing just bought a condo downtown," she'd say. "The view from her balcony is incredible." I'd nod and smile, not realizing these weren't just observations but comparisons. When Becca started talking about opportunities in Charlotte, I should have recognized the warning signs. "There's just more happening there," she'd say. "Better restaurants, better shopping, better prospects." I'd gently remind her about our life in Asheville, my established client base, our nearly paid-off home, the community we'd built. She'd grow quiet after these conversations, spending more time with friends I'd never met, coming home later from work. The cutting comments slipped into our daily conversations, so gradually I barely noticed their increasing frequency. "Don't you want to do more than just make furniture for the rest of your life?" she asked one night, while scrolling through social media. My college roommate's husband just made partner at his firm. They're building a vacation home in the Outer Banks. Each comment was a tiny paper cut on my heart, but I told myself all marriages go through phases. One evening I found her looking at real estate listings in Charlotte when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling away. I didn't want to believe what was happening. Instead, I called my Uncle Jack, a retired attorney who specialized in family law. "Just checking in," I said casually. "Becca and I should probably update our will and financial arrangements, right?" He agreed to review our documents, though something in his voice told me he sensed there was more to my call. It was around this time that I noticed the swollen lymph node on the left side of my neck. Not painful, just persistent. I ignored it for a few weeks, assuming it would resolve on its own. When it didn't, I made an appointment, telling myself it was probably nothing serious. The night before my follow-up appointment to get the test results, Becca and I had dinner together. I picked at my food, anxiety stealing my appetite. "You're quiet tonight," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Just worried about the doctor tomorrow," I admitted. "Oh," she said, finally glancing at me. "I'm sure it's nothing." Then she launched into a story about office drama that I couldn't focus on. my mind swimming with worst-case scenarios I couldn't voice. The next morning, I sat in the sterile examination room alone, the doctor's words hitting me like physical blows. Lymphoma. Cancer of the lymphatic system. Treatment options. Survival rates. The room seemed to tilt and spin as he explained that while treatable, I faced a difficult road ahead. Chemotherapy. Possibly radiation. I'd need to start treatment quickly. I felt like I was drowning, desperately needing an anchor. Becca. I needed Becca. With shaking hands, I called her from the parking lot. "Can you meet me at home?" I asked, my voice breaking. "We need to talk." "I'm running errands," she said, background noise suggesting she was in a cafe. "I'll be back later." "It's important," I insisted. "I got my test results." There was a pause. "What did they say?" When I couldn't immediately respond, she sighed. "Look, I'm in the middle of something. I'll see you at home later, okay?" The drive home passed in a blur. I remember thinking I needed to be clear and direct when I told her. We would face this together, we would fight. We would make it through. But when I pushed open our front door, the house felt different. Empty somehow. I called her name, moving through the rooms until I reached our bedroom. The closet door stood open, her side half empty. Her suitcase was gone. The framed photo of our wedding day had been removed from the nightstand. As I stood there, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, my phone buzzed with a text from Becca. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer confirmation, moving our entire $42,000 savings to an account I didn't recognize, followed by 4 words that would haunt me. I didn't sign up for this. In that moment of shocking clarity, I understood that my wife had abandoned me on the very day of my cancer diagnosis, taking every penny we had saved together. The betrayal was so complete, so deliberate, that there was no room for confusion or misinterpretation. Instead of rage, I felt a strange, hollow calm wash over me. I texted back only, "Take care." Then I walked out to our back deck, sank into the Adirondack chair I'd built during our first summer together, and watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. I sat there for hours, trying to process the dual devastations, cancer growing inside my body and the death of a marriage I thought would last forever. I began chemotherapy alone the following week, taking an Uber to my first treatment because I couldn't trust myself to drive home afterward. The nurse's sympathetic smile when I said my wife wouldn't be joining us nearly broke me. That night was one of the darkest of my life. The side effects hit hard and fast. Violent nausea, bone-deep aches, a fatigue so profound it felt like gravity had doubled. I ended up on the bathroom floor, sweating and shaking with no one to bring me water or hold my hand. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at my door. Doug and Diane from next door stood there with containers of homemade soup, ginger tea, and worried expressions. "We noticed Becca's car hasn't been here for days," Diane said gently. "And you looked unwell when you came home today." I broke down then, telling them everything through tears I couldn't control. They stayed with me that night, Diane sleeping on our couch while Doug set up a cot in the home gym to be nearby if I needed help. Their kindness was a lifeline I hadn't known to hope for. Eventually, I called my sister Maya in Charleston. She wanted to drive up immediately, but I convinced her to wait until my next treatment when I'd need her most. I also connected with Uncle Jack, who came over with a legal pad and grave expression as I laid out my situation, showing him all our financial documents, and Becca's damning text message. We discovered that Becca had transferred the money minutes after my call about the diagnosis, then immediately wrote a $35,000 check to her parents, clearly attempting to hide the funds where she thought I couldn't reach them. Through Becca's cousin Rachel, who had always been kind to me, I confirmed that Becca knew about my diagnosis when she left. She had told family members she couldn't handle it and needed a fresh start. 2 weeks into my treatment, a letter arrived from Becca's lawyer demanding a divorce, citing, quote, "irreconcilable differences," and requesting half the equity in the house, with no mention of the money she'd already taken or my illness. I sat at our kitchen table, letter in one hand, anti-nausea medication in the other, wondering how the woman who had once looked at me with such adoration could now be so callously cruel. Can you believe someone could be this heartless? I still sometimes struggle to wrap my mind around it. As I fought the cancer ravaging my body, Becca waged her own war for what she called her share of our assets. I discovered she had attempted to access our safe deposit box containing important documents and tried to remove my name from joint credit cards. Uncle Jack enlisted the help of Olivia Chen, a sharp attorney with experience in cases involving financial fraud during divorce proceedings. Together, they helped me formulate a counter-strategy. We documented everything: the timeline of my diagnosis, Becca's knowledge of it, her immediate financial actions, my abandoned and medically precarious state, and the attempted concealment of funds through her parents. Through the fog of constant fatigue and nausea, I tried to focus on healing while they handled the legal battle. My sister Maya arrived for my third round of chemo, taking family leave to stay with me for 2 weeks. She cooked meals I could barely eat, cleaned when I couldn't lift my head from the pillow, and sat with me through the endless hours of treatment. "You will get through this," she'd whisper, when the pain made me doubt I'd survive the night. "Both the cancer and Becca. You will outlast them both." A meeting was arranged with Becca, her father, and their lawyer at Olivia's office. I insisted on attending despite looking gaunt and frail from the treatments. I sat quietly as Olivia methodically laid out our evidence, her voice never rising, yet somehow filling the room with undeniable authority. The atmosphere changed palpably when she mentioned the possibility of adding Becca's parents to the lawsuit for accepting fraudulently obtained marital assets. Lawrence Harrington's face flushed with indignation. "This is outrageous," he sputtered. "You can't possibly." Olivia cut him off with a single raised finger. "Mr. Harrington, accepting funds that were transferred with fraudulent intent makes you an accessory. I'm sure you'd prefer to avoid having your business practices examined in open court." The room fell silent. I looked at Becca for the first time since she'd left. She wouldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at her manicured nails, her face unreadable. My terms were clear: full return of the $42,000, Becca relinquishing all claims to the house, my workshop, and my grandfather's land that I'd inherited before our marriage. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges for financial fraud and abandonment. 2 days later, Becca accepted all terms. Her parents returned the full amount within 30 days, though I heard through Rachel that Lawrence had raged about being, quote, extorted. I didn't feel victorious when the money hit my account. Just empty, and somehow older than my years. I used the money to pay down my medical bills, which were mounting despite my insurance. 6 months, 12 rounds of chemotherapy, and countless sleepless nights later, I received the words I'd been waiting for: complete remission. My oncologist cautioned that lymphoma could always return, but for now, the cancer was gone. I stood in the parking lot of the medical center, the same spot where I'd called Becca with my diagnosis, and wept. Not from joy, though that was there too, but from the sheer relief of having survived when there were nights I truly believed I wouldn't. I decided to sell the house in Asheville. Every corner held memories I needed to leave behind. My friend Markin Boone had been asking me for years to join his high-end custom furniture collective, and the timing finally felt right. I used the proceeds from the house to buy a small cabin with a spacious workshop, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains with a view that never failed to center me when anxiety about the cancer returning crept in. 3 months into my new life, a text from Becca appeared on my phone. "I heard you're in remission. I'm glad. I know you won't believe this, but I think about you often. I made a terrible mistake. I was scared and selfish. I'm sorry, Ethan, for everything." I stared at those words for a long time, sitting on my porch as a summer storm rolled across the mountains. What could she possibly expect me to say? That I forgave her for abandoning me at my darkest hour? For stealing money that could have eased my treatment? For trying to take the home I'd built with my own hands while I was fighting for my life? After careful consideration, I responded with just 4 words. "I survived. Be well." Then I blocked her number, put my phone away, and returned to my workshop, where I was creating my finest piece yet. Not for a client, but for myself. A cabinet made from reclaimed heart pine, with joinery so precise it would last generations. The front panels featured an inlay of mountain silhouettes, echoing the view from my new porch. It was a physical manifestation of my journey, something broken, meticulously restored, and now stronger than before. What would you have done in Ethan's position? Would you have found the strength to simply walk away? Or would rage have consumed you? As I run my hands over this cabinet now, feeling the grain of the wood beneath my fingertips, I realized that surviving cancer taught me how precious life is, and surviving betrayal taught me how crucial it is to fill that life with people worthy of your time and trust. Some days are still hard. I get scans every 6 months, and the week before each one is filled with a gnawing dread that the lymphoma might have returned. Sometimes I wake from dreams where I'm back on that bathroom floor, sick and alone. But those moments pass. The sun rises over the mountains, and I go to my workshop, where rough wood waits to be transformed, where my hands know exactly what to do, even when my heart is uncertain. If you're going through something similar, health challenges, betrayal, loss, know that the darkest moments don't last forever. There is strength in you that you haven't yet discovered. There is a future waiting that you cannot yet imagine. There are people who will show up when you least expect it, bringing soup and kindness when you need it most. I am living proof that you can lose what you thought was essential and still find your way to something meaningful. You can be abandoned and still find your way home. You can be broken and emerge stronger at the mended places. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. We heal better when we share our experiences, when we realize we're not alone in our struggles. And if you want to hear more stories of survival against impossible odds, be sure to subscribe. Remember, in the end, it's not about the people who leave. It's about the person you become in their absence.